Pause that.
No,
Pause the recording.
it wasn't set up like.
All right, welcome. Karen, welcome.
Welcome. We're so excited to be doing this.
We have been studying up, and we are not experts by any means, but we are going to give you an overview of what ballot issues are. And there's only 3 of them this year, so that's a good deal. So we will have time for questions after each ballot initiative. So if you have them, you can write them in the chat. And then also after this, we're expected to take maybe 30 minutes, something like that. Then we want to go and have everybody unmute, put your pretty faces up, and then we have some important things about the League of Women Voters, Chaffey County, and what's happening. So we want you to stay for that. And but this purpose of this is to become informed. The League of Women Voters likes to have voters informed before they vote. So that's what we're doing here. So we're going to be doing the ballot issues, and we're going to share screen now. And we're going to go back to the beginning. And that's a preview. See what's going to happen here. Going to get to see what's going on. Also, if you want to see, we just got ballot issues, and we don't have very many to give out, but we're going to put some in the libraries. But if you want to look at them and download them from either our website, if you do, maybe unscreen a minute. Now that you got the screen sharing, if you go to the League of Women Voters website, Chaffey County, I'm going to show you here. All right, so here we have it. So right now, if you scroll up upcoming events, and we are going to be doing much more with that, but if you scroll down here, it says vote. So here's the panel down here. If you're on a big computer, you'll see it, but you can get information about Vote 411. You can click on that, and you can look, put your address in, and it'll tell you in Buena Vista. I looked at the school board candidates, and when I looked at it, all but one had submitted information about who they are and what the questions were. I have not looked at the Salida one yet. Down here, a little further, is 3 lines that you can do one of them. I don't know if you can see them here. There you go. If you want to just look at Amendment 78, you can click on that, and it'll bring up kind of the pros and cons. If you want to go down a little further, there is the English.
Turn up the volume on the speaker to your right.
Right.
There's a Spanish and an English version of the league pamphlets, and they look kind of like this. This is kind of a pamphlet. So if you want to look at that while we're doing it, or just go along with us. All right. So now we are going to go back to the share screen. And Karen and I are going to take turns on these. All right, state ballot issues. All right, first one, Karen.
So the legislative authority for spending state money. We're not going to read to you. You can read the ballot title and all of this information, and you've all got the blue book in the mail. And so that's the ballot issue is the same. Unfortunately, there was a law passed that makes the ballot titles way longer than they used to be. It gives you more information, however.
Okay, overview.
Yeah. So on the overview, this is an initiated amendment to the Constitution. So it's not just a law. This is an amendment that will go in our Constitution.
I think we have 160 or so amendments to our Constitution.
Yeah. So this requires custodial money to be appropriated by the General Assembly. And so there's 2 things. The amendment has to be approved by 55% of the voters. And what the heck is custodial money, you may ask? Well, that is funds that the state gets that don't go through the appropriation process in the legislature. So the custodial funds allow money to be spent immediately. In Louisiana, those might be Hurricane FEMA funds. Here, it might be COVID funds, and they can be spent by the appropriate agencies that they're designated to be spent by immediately. If this amendment were to pass, it would go through the same budgeting appropriation process as all the other monies that the legislature decides how we get spent. So again, this would require the whole legislature to approve expenditure of these funds. So the examples are when the federal government gives us block grants, settlement monies, or distributions for emergencies. So if we got emergency money for the landslides in Glenwood or COVID, that would be an example of custodial funds. Okay. The current law requires the treasurer to put custodial funds into a separate account that is not subject to the appropriation by the legislature. It's not in the regular budgeting process. All right. The proposed law, passage of this Amendment 78, would allow this money to be spent only after the legislature does an annual appropriation. And this would go into a new separate account. Okay?
Okay, those who are supporting it,
No, you're opposed.
oh, excuse me, supporting. You're the
What happened?
supporter. Here it is.
Okay,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, we got too much stuff. So those in favor of this initiative say the amendment, before I go here, the pros and cons of each of these ballot issues are what the people supporting or opposing this wrote in
To the league. Yeah.
to the league. This is not what the League of Women Voters of Colorado says is in opposition or in support. It's what the other organizations are saying. So the organizations in favor of this amendment say Amendment 78 would ensure that all state money is allocated by the legislature, not just the budgeting, normal appropriations, but custodial funds. They also say that it provides necessary oversight and transparency. They say that instead of allowing the Attorney General or the governor to spend millions of dollars on their own by the state agencies, this amendment would help provide necessary oversight. It establishes public hearings and promotes open and transparent process, just like any other budget item. So whether it's settlement money, stimulus funds, they say there should be a public hearing where elected officials get feedback from their constituents. They say Coloradans deserve an open process where there is transparency about how state funds are being spent. There are 3 organizations in favor of this: the Committee for Spending Transparency, Colorado Rising State Action, and Unite for Colorado.
So there's organizations, there's no known organization that's registered oppositions, but the reasons that people are opposing says that the funds are already allocated and spent only on designated items. So like when Volkswagen lawsuit ended, they had to give states money and the money had to go for clean air. So at that time, the money was sent to the state, the governor or the treasurer put the money into the clean air fund or whoever was managing it. The money then was notified, the legislature was notified that the money was there and it was going to be spent on clean air. And at the end of the year, the state legislature also saw that the state, that agency for clean air had spent the money accordingly. So those who oppose this say, well, this is already being done. The outcome is the same, that the money is designated. If it goes to spending for clean air, then that's what it has to go. Or if it's the tobacco money and it had to go for anti-smoking campaign, they can't take the money and send it somewhere else. So the outcome is the same, but the process is slower because they're now waiting for the legislature to convene, hold a hearing on it, have public hearings on it. And the end result is that the money has to go as it was designated to begin with. Having a separate account, so the state treasurer has to set up a separate account to put all of this money in. It goes to a new, which now, if there's interest earned, so let's say in the tobacco money, if there was interest earned, that money would stay in that clean energy fund. But now any interest earned on any of these grant monies would then go to the general fund. The only money that this does not affect, and what the state legislature is, our taxes. So your property taxes, your sales tax, your licenses on fishing, or your driver's license, whatever that's the money that the state legislature currently allocates fund for. And they decide to spend so much on education, so much for here and that. This is money that is totally separate. I can't think of anything else. Can you, Karen, anything to add on that? There's no registered opposition to it.
Right. But just because there are not registered oppositions, this is when the league's information came out. Between now and then, other organizations, newspapers and stuff will come out in support or in favor of
Right.
various ballot things. Okay, let me just check. All right, there's no
Yeah,
questions in the
any
chat.
questions?
Any
No questions.
questions? And if you can put them in the chat on Amendment 78. I'm sure a lot of you will have to reread some of this and digest it a little bit more, might have additional questions
Yeah.
later.
And if you got the blue book, that's got information in it. Different agencies have it too, and you can always go to our league website or the state website and get information about it again too. Okay, so Karen, you want to talk
Okay,
about,
Proposition 119.
oh, let me interrupt.
Yes.
All three of these were brought to the ballot by citizen petitions. Okay, citizens signed petitions and received the correct number of signatures that the Secretary of State approved them to be on the ballot. So all of them are citizen initiatives.
Is it 78 that's being challenged?
Don't remember.
Okay, I think, okay. All right, Proposition 119. This is not an amendment called Learning Enrichment and Academic Progress Program.
Or LEAP.
Yes, or LEAP. And this is the whole big, long ballot title. And you know, ballots that, issues that involve money can only be put on the ballot every 2 years. And so there is some debate as to whether one of these issues is even related to money. So Proposition 119, an overview of this. This is an initiated amendment to the revised statutes. So it's a law.
Which the legislature can
Okay.
change.
And the legislature can change this
Yeah.
again. Much harder to change a constitutional amendment. So what this passage would do is raise the tax on marijuana sales by 5% and move the school trust land revenue to raise another 137.6 million. Currently, most of the money in school trust lands go to support schools. The LEAP program would provide out-of-school learning and enrichment opportunities to kids from 5 to 17. So basically, school-age kids. Parents would choose which programs that kids would attend, but the payments would go directly to providers. So this would make a whole new bureaucracy, whole new learning agency that is independent from oversight. They would, the Board of Education wouldn't have any say over this. They would have their own board. It would get appointed, people get recommended. Its initial board would get appointed by the governor. And afterwards, after it's all said and done, if it passes, subsequent members are recommended by the initial board. So the program providers, the people who would provide these tutoring and enrichment programs for after school, they would have to meet certain criteria that the board would set.
This new board.
The new board. Go ahead. And so they would certify any of these providers. And that could be, you know, an individual person who's tutoring. It could be some organization, new or current organization, but they would have to be certified. School districts, charter schools, and BOCES are pre-certified as providers. Parents would get a list made available by the board, and they would select who they want to have give an arts program or a math tutoring or whatever to their child. The financial aid distribution, so the money comes in from the increased marijuana tax, and it would go into this bucket overseen by this new board. And so the distribution would go to, first of all, youth and families at or below the federal poverty level.
Which is
All right.
$26,000 for a family of 4. So
Right.
that's the poverty level.
So these kinds of students are given first priority. After that, youth and families with income up to twice the federal poverty level. So a family of 4 that's making a whopping $52,000 a year. So those providers chosen by the parents are paid up to $1,500 per student per year. So they might have 3 kids and they would get up to, if they all qualified, they could get $4,500 a year that would paid not to the parents, but to those providers that the parents have chosen. Okay. All right, hang on one second.
How is it funded?
Okay. I was looking at the chat here. Okay, how the program is funded. Legal marijuana in the state of Colorado, the current sales tax is 15%. In 2022, it would go up to 18%, the next year 19%, and in 2024, 20%. The school trust land revenues, which are currently going to schools, about $21 million of that will be annually diverted to this new board to decide how it gets spent
For those programs, yeah.
for those programs. Okay.
Support.
So supporting this proposition.
All right. So those in favor of the initiative, they said that this closes the gap between those who can already afford to put their kids in enrichment programs or programs after school, but this would then leave families that are below that level, that give them an opportunity. It said that LEAP would support education needs for the low-income students, and it would help make up for program losses in recent years, because it could be programs like music, art, and career or technical education. And it would also, they say, provide opportunity for teachers to earn money as program providers. So I guess that would mean like after-school programs. There are 9 registered organizations that support this. They include Academic Advocates, African Leadership Group, Colorado Children's Campaign, Colorado Succeeds, Colorado Youth Congress, Latino Education Coalition, and there's other ones that you can see on various websites. Okay, opposition.
Okay, those groups that are opposed to this say that this opposition gives public money to private providers instead of restoring cut programs or providing additional learning opportunities. Colorado is already 47th in the country in per pupil funding. So this money would go from the state trust land to another entity not supporting teacher salaries, supplies, whatever. Okay, that would go to private providers. There is no requirement for parents to choose academic subject tutoring. In other words, their kid might be low in math, but maybe the parents want them to be tutored in art or have an enriching art thing. So there's not a requirement for that. It doesn't address the lack of providers in rural communities. Maybe there are no art talented or trumpet players or whatever in Chaffee County, which we know there are, but in
Rural, yeah.
rural Colorado, there's no.
Some smaller
support.
districts really have
Yeah.
right. Lots of issues, yeah.
So instead of directing these money to directly invest in public schools, these would go to private providers. The opposition also says that, obviously COVID has subjected kids to big learning gaps, such disruption to the schools. And there's no requirement for parents to choose the areas that their kids have a gap in to be provided by LEAP. All right. It establishes programs that compete with the public schools because sales taxes are regressive. In other words, those who can't afford to pay end up paying more of their income than the people who can't afford to pay. Increased marijuana sales taxes will be paid disproportionately by low-income individuals. Increasing the tax will increase the price gap between legal and black market marijuana, pushing more individuals into the black market and hurting legitimate marijuana businesses who pay taxes, who pay into the Colorado Best Fund. There's already a bucket that the sales tax from marijuana goes into that supports building new or rehabbing school buildings. So that's what the opposition says. Those organizations in opposition include the Colorado Association of School Boards, Colorado Association of, this is opposition, School Executives, the Colorado PTA, Working Families, the Colorado AFL-CIO, Taxpayers for Public Education, Uniting for Kids, Advocates for Public Education, American Federation of Teachers, Coloradans Against School Vouchers. This is very similar to a voucher program. The Colorado Alliance for Retired Americans, the Colorado Democratic Latino Initiative, the Colorado Energy and Environment Initiative, and there's probably a few more.
I might just add that at the time of the printing of the ballots, CEA was, Colorado Education Association was listed as a group that was in opposition, and since the ballot pamphlets have been printed, they have notified the league that they are neutral on that particular position.
Okay, I want to add one thing because some of you are gratefully being engaged and adding some things in the chat. We're going to go through the initiatives and then we're going to come back to the chat because we can't manipulate 4 different things at once. So please be patient and keep writing your questions.
All right. Proposition 120. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting one, and it has some interesting, I think they could make a movie out of it because it
Really?
has, things are changing all the time. All right, this is a property tax assessment rate reduction and voter approval revenue change. Well, that sounds darn good. All right, so here's the big, long bill title that you're welcome to read at your leisure over a cup of tea, I guess. So this amendment proposes that it would lower non-residential property tax assessment rates from the current 29% to 26.4%. And the proposition also said it would lower residential property taxes from 7.1 to 6.5. And property taxes, as you know, are based on 2 numbers. They're based on the assessed
Valuation.
right. Hit the little button. Okay, the assessed valuation rate, which is currently 7.15 statewide for all residential property. That's your house, my house, everybody's house, but businesses are taxed at the 29% rate. And then there's mill levies. Each jurisdiction, in Chaffey County, we have Chaffey County government, we have the library taxes, we have Chaffey Water Conservancy
Water.
District, we have the hospital district,
School.
school districts, we have the county, the cities. So those mill levies are set. So each mill levy set throughout the state will be different. Right. This anticipates $103 billion revenue.
1.3 billion.
Thank you. Revenue reduction from property taxes. So that means the state and all these local outfits get money from state property taxes will see a $1.03 billion deduction. But it still allows, according to this proposition, 25 million to be partially the state will take from the state funds and partially compensate local governments for any losses that they have. So it basically decreases property taxes. All right, so the property tax funds cities, schools, police, fire, libraries, and you know that. And this would lower the revenue for these groups. Okay. The rise in property values and home prices might offset this, meaning houses have gone higher. So maybe the prices, taxes will be higher, and even though it's a lower rate. The rise in property values and home prices might offset decreases in assessment affect all districts. Okay, now here comes the twist. Back in
Wait, before you go there, so
Okay.
we all know, if we live in Chaffey County, that our property values and home prices are going sky high. All right. That isn't happening on the Eastern Plains. But if this were to pass, the decrease in the assessment rate would lower our property,
taxes bit.
our taxes and the Eastern Plains taxes. And those people don't have any other way to make up because their house values are not going up. So those fire, police, schools are going to be, losing more. All right, so here's the kicker.
Okay, so one thing happened. So the people getting this proposition written, they got it written, approved by the Secretary of State's office. Then they sent it out to people to be signed. And so while that's going on, and they had it submitted, I think, in August and finally approved by the Secretary of State's office. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, at the state legislature, the Senate introduced Senate Bill 21-293. It was introduced by a bipartisan group, passed the Senate with all votes except one person was absent that day. It then went to the House. It passed on party line votes in the House with the Democrats. It passed with the Democrats. All right, what this does, it changed some things. It's set up, and it's kind of a interesting, yeah. So this bill has an effect on this proposition. So what the bill said, which is law, signed into law by the governor, it said that for the tax year 2022 and 2023, it would temporarily reduce the assessment rate for agricultural property or renewable energy property from 29 to 26.4%. And for property classified as multifamily residential real property from 7.15 to 6.8. And so that's, and then it said on the assessment rate, it would reduce by initiative measure. For all other residential real properties, that's Karen's house, my house, it would reduce it from 7.15 to 6.95, okay? And that would happen for the tax year 22 and 23. And then after that, it would go back to where it is now, which is our houses are at 7.15. So this now has, then they also changed how housing is defined. So according to what we understand now, that if this passes, it would still reduce rates by lower percentages and only for, try the next bullet.
No, it didn't come there.
Okay,
I
okay.
don't know why
And
this
only
doesn't-
for multifamily housing and lodging. So like motels, if you owned a duplex or a fourplex, that as the owner of that property, you would get this tax rate deduction. If you owned a motel, that would go into it. But as a family, private home owner, it would not affect that. So that's how that is. So it's a bit confusing. All right, those in favor of this, those who got it on the ballot said it would cut the assessment rate by 9%. And they said as home prices go up, it's time to cut property taxes. Local governments receive $12 billion in stimulus funds. It's time to give the folks here a break, is what they're saying. What else did they say? Local governments slows down the increase of government spending. Okay. And it proposes 25 million in fund for the homestead exemption. So some of you, if you've been in your home for over 10 years, you get the homestead exemption on the first 100,000. So the state is still going to provide money that would go into the homestead exemption. So people could still apply
Who's
for that.
supporting this?
It is supported by Cut Property Taxes, Carter Rising State Action, and Unite for Colorado. Aren't those the same ones that did the first?
A lot of them,
Did the
yes.
same, okay, the
Um,
first one. All right, all right. Those
right.
in opposition.
The people who are opposed to this say that it cuts revenue needed by the local entities and the special districts. And you know, I think it was last year or the year before, we had an issue with the assessments, especially for our fire districts here. And the residents of Chaffey County voted to stabilize that
Right,
assessment for the fire district.
it's 7.15.
Yeah, okay.
For the fire district, yeah.
Right, for the fire district. So local entities cannot raise the mill levy without an election because of Tabor. So this, you know, could create a substantial loss in revenue. Some localities, again, have little or no tax increase. But if the assessment tax rates decline, they have to go on a vote via Tabor, and we all know how difficult, you know, that has been. It's important to note that once rates are cut, Tabor requires a very difficult and uncertain process to restore it. This 25 million to partially compensate is not guaranteed and may not occur. The organizations in opposition to this, I don't believe there are any.
This is one,
No,
that's, okay. Thought was
one
one.
that had been in opposition is now neutral there in this one. This is really
Okay,
connected.
so what if it passes? It will not lower taxes on most other businesses. And it will temporarily now, with the Senate Bill 293, our residential ag property and renewal property rates are going to be decreased slightly for 2022 and 2023, and then return to higher levels and the same 7.1 level that they are now. It only lowers property tax assessment rates for two specific types. So right now, if it passes, it will only affect those who own multifamily housing and lodging properties. part of the thinking of this, that would allow those who own property, rental property might not raise the rent, so that would help people renting not have to have increased rent. But I don't think there's any guarantee. in that.
Actually, this property tax assessment, it only benefits the owners of these
Right.
condos and apartments and motels and hotels.
Right.
Bed and breakfasts are not involved. Short-term rentals are not involved. Your house and my house are not involved.
I saw one place where they did list bed and breakfasts, but I'm not sure.
That was not, they were exempted
Okay.
there.
This will allow the state to retain 25 million a year to revenue above what they can have as a TABOR funding, and that they could help local governments make up where it's lost. I suppose they'll have to apply for that through a grant or something. And this would only go through to the years 26 and 27. Whereas that other one said it was 23 and 20. Oh, this is the proposition. So this proposition ends in 27. I guess that's how I would read that.
Right.
Okay, so as we get forward to look at some of the questions, remember you can go and get information about your local elections on Vote 411. Thanks to Scott Hartman for doing that and getting the candidates in the county to put their information on. This is a national organization, so when you go on, it'll ask you for your address because it doesn't know where you're living. It's not just a local one. Okay,
Okay,
Thank you.
so
Questions?
I'm going to address the chat. So I don't know, Marilyn, if we can take this off screen sharing, shall we?
yeah,
Maybe.
right.
Oh, I can, there. All right, I think we stopped our screen sharing now. So Joanne asked, does the league have an opinion? Yes, they do. The league is opposed to all three of these amendments. And if you go to our website, it addresses why they are. The league studies things in big general terms, and it has to do with equity, with the environment, funding, financing, fair taxes, all of those kinds of things. And so when you go to those responses, it tells you which of those things they feel that this proposition or amendment fails to address. Not sure that makes sense. Okay. Kate wanted to know of instances where custodial funds have been spent inappropriately. We do not have that
We
information.
don't know.
Again, state agencies have to publish what they spend, so there is already transparency here. I'm sure anybody could file a lawsuit against anything. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, the organizations and people that initiated the propositions and amendments. Jenny, I looked this up. You can find it on the Secretary of State's website to find the organizations. I believe Unite for Colorado was involved in 2, if not all 3. They
Yeah.
were all,
I was thinking it was also in the blue book, and I was just double looking to see. Somewhere I read that they paid people to go out and carry petitions for one of these, and I don't remember which one it is now, but it's on the Secretary of State's site. So that's a good question, and people can go there to find out who is opposing it or supporting it and their reasons.
right, okay. And that's a good question. I'm going to skip that one, Cheryl, because I had that question for just a minute, and I'm going to go to Carol,
Okay.
because I.
Where
have
would
an
these
answer.
services be provided? In the schools, the provider facilities, or students' home? Since there's no oversight, how is the value decided? The oversight they have is through this new organization that they're going to find, that new authority. So they have they have oversight of the organization. So I can imagine it can be, if they've been approved by this new organization, that's, that they'll say maybe it's going to be an after school, or maybe it's going to be a skiing thing, and they'll take them skiing. I don't know. So, but the organization that's a new board, 9, it's the authority. It has 9 members. That originally would be appointed bipartisan by the governor. And then after that, if people leave it, that organization will, with recommendations, put new people. So I don't think they have a firm where they will be held.
So I'm going to go back. Cheryl asked, could an organization like Boys and Girls Club be authorized as a provider? So I had earlier emailed our director, and he said that we voted neutral because it would not provide any new money to Boys and Girls Club. But it would give money to families who could send their kids to Boys and Girls Club. But some organizations like Boys and Girls Club has a sliding scale. So if you can afford it, you pay $50 a year per kid. If you can't afford it, if you're on free and reduced lunch, you might pay $2 or nothing. So they still get the services that Boys and Girls Clubs offer. They wouldn't get the money to hire more tutors or offer more enrichment programs, if that answers your question.
So, and the parents never get the money. The money goes to whoever is providing it, and they
Right.
can go up to $1,500. So if it's only a $50, it might be 50. I'm not sure.
So Boys and Girls Club would have to hire more tutors to provide these services if that weren't coming there, is my understanding.
The
And you
consequences.
answer, okay.
Yeah, what are the consequences of school districts losing $21 million? Well, the school districts are already behind in funding, so that would be devastating to them. I mean, it was nice the federal government gave them some COVID release, so that's been some release. But like Karen said, we're like 47th in the nation for the amount of money that we spend per person, per pupil in the state. So it would be harmful, I would believe.
So Barb asked if there's a requirement that the academic tutoring models be research proven. That is not listed anywhere in the criteria. The board, I suppose, could do that, which might make scientific sense.
That
But-
LEAP board.
Yes,
Yeah.
but there is no requirement as of that right now.
Okay, oh, we got more here now.
Yeah. So, and Barb also asked if rising property values also result in the need to pay higher salaries for people, to live and work here. They will,
Yeah,
but
if they can afford to live here.
if they can afford to live here. So a place like Chaffey County, whose property values are going up, then their property taxes are going up. So then the people who don't share in the wealth, who are renters, say, and are service workers, their rents are probably going to go up because the property taxes on their rental things are going to go up, but yet their salaries, what we're paying them, is not going to get up. So, this is not a solution to our issues.
Somebody asked where to share again, where you can find the league's opinions. Okay, one thing, back to our local league page is one place, and towards the bottom, and I guess I didn't get it highlighted very well, but here at the bottom, it says positions on ballot issues. They study them based on these studies. They have positions, and then it has a little click here link. I don't think that you can see it. Or if you go to the state league page, it has ballot issues, and you can click on it, and it'll tell you, they work hard. The league works hard to give the pros and cons of the ballot issues, and that's what we've done. And then in addition to that, we try to separate that. We've given you a pro con that you can make up your own mind, but somebody asked what the league position was, so we shared what the league position was, and you can go and see why it's their position.
Margie,
Yes.
Margie, this is Marilyn. I just went and looked on the league website. I was the state website trying to find those league positions, and it was a little difficult to find. But up in the menu bar, there's a tab on legislative action. And if you click on that and then click on where the league stands, you get to the page that hooks you up to this year's ballot issues and what their position is.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
And maybe we'll try to make a more direct link, if we can, on our website to those positions.
Okay.
And the reasons why they
And
had that.
the reasons why.
So
yeah.
thanks. So, so Joanne, we hope we had, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so I think we'll stop. Did we get them all?
We did. And
so we hope we got the general idea. We've got the blue book, and you can get some more information and take times to study them. But I think we'll quit recording now, and then we'll have our announcements and talk about what's new and exciting with the League of Voters, Chaffey County. You can unmute, you can put your pictures on, start your video. We want to see your faces. And hi, Rose. We can see
All right.
Rose.
Second, I hit the wrong button.
Okay. There's Ellen.
Where did my?
There you go. Or just
Wow.
pause it maybe.